Hey, Mark here from St. Stephen's University. We recently had a Red Room event here on campus called Towards a Decolonizing Faith, and today we're bringing you a talk by Kanatiio, who also goes by the name Alan Gabriel. Now, Kanatiio has worked on the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the Aboriginal Healing Foundation, the Indian Residential School Survivor Society. He's been negotiations coordinator for the Peskotomuhkati Nation, and he's an adjunct professor, of course, at St. Stephen's University. In this talk, you'll hear about how Canada can help our First Nations communities by getting out of the way. You'll hear him talk about what decolonization means to our Indigenous neighbours, and he'll also expound on what is needed in Canadian Aboriginal relations right now. Kanatiio has been working in these communities for decades, and so he's a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And so without further ado, I'll get out of the way. Here he is, Kanatiio, Alan Gabriel.
Good words. I'm not sure how to react to those. I got that song stuck in my head. Thanks, Joel. Anybody else confused about decolonization? That's the new word. I'm 61 years old, so I can remember back in the 60s when we were talking about sovereignty, and then in the 70s we were talking about self-government. In the 80s, we started talking about self-determination. In the 90s, we started talking about healing. And then in the late 90s and the 2000s, we started talking about reconciliation. Now we're talking about decolonization. Do we know what any of those words mean? Do they mean the same thing to you as Canadians as they do to me? I don't know. But I want to try something if I can. Can I get 4 volunteers to come up here for a minute? Walter? Joe, and 2 others. When you don't volunteer, you get volunteer. One more. I just want to try something. I don't think colonization is the same thing for Canadians as it is for us. So I just want to try this illustration. Can you stand behind me? Yeah. All of you stand, one in front, one on each side, all with your backs to me. Okay. Here. Close it. Back up. All the way. All the way. Good. What's this? This is my version of colonization. This is how I feel. Not with you, not with Canadians. When I talk to your politicians and your governments, this is how I feel. And I can't even do that. But what's the solution to this? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I feel a little bit better. That's all I need. For my community to get better, we need Canada to get out of the way. Canada's been in the way. You described that really well, Matt and Joel, both of you, about the power dynamic. This is what I tell people. We don't need a lot. We need room, we need time. Thanks, guys. You can sit. Thanks. Tom Sidden, anybody know that name? He was a minister of Indian Affairs during the Oka crisis in 1990. He was the first minister of Indian Affairs to ever come to our longhouse in late 1990, early 1991. And he asked us what we needed as a community from him and from his government. And our chief asked me to respond on behalf of our community. And I said, we need you to get away from us. We need you to go away and leave us alone for a while. My community's been divided for as long as I can remember. It got worse after the crisis because it was your fault, it's your fault, your fault. And it's just gone downhill from there. So I said, we need time and we need space to resolve our internal issues. Once we've got that done, then we can call you and we can actually start to resolve issues. 10 years later, I heard a story of a woman in the Yukon, traditional woman who doesn't believe in the elective system, but got fed up with the corruption in her community and decided to step outside her circle and run for chief in her community. She was threatened, she had her tires slashed, she had her windows smashed, they burned her car, did all kinds of stuff. And she stuck it out and she won. And her first day as the chief, she called a meeting of all the services in her community She called the province, she called the feds, all of the government departments that they deal with to a big meeting. She split the room in half. These are my people, the rest of you go away. We're gonna deal with our stuff. And she told them the exact same thing that we told the minister in 91. Now, in response to what we told the minister in 1991, he said, that sounds good. I agree with that. I support that. The very next day, he announced a plebiscite in my community and imposed elections, which have divided my community ever since. So every time we try to get up, something like that happens and it knocks us back down. And it's an exercise, it's frustrating. It's just that endless cycle. So to me, decolonization, I think there's a couple of, I like to use movies for allegory and for as examples. There's two movies that come to mind that I think give us examples of models of decolonization. First one's Avatar, if you've seen Avatar. What was that model of decolonization at the end of that movie? Everybody out. Unless you want to live like us, get out. This is our place, go away. I don't think that one's reasonable. The other movie that gives us a model of decolonization, to my mind, is a movie called Labyrinth with David Bowie. I don't know if you've seen that one. If you haven't, the premise is a young woman is babysitting her infant brother. She's not happy about it. She makes a wish that he would go away. She doesn't know there's a goblin or whatever hanging out the window, and the baby disappears. The whole movie is her trying to get this baby back. And this dwarf or whatever it is that took the baby is taking it to the Goblin King's castle in the middle of Labyrinth, and she's trying to get to that. To me, that Labyrinth is the Indian Act for Indigenous people. Once you get in there, man, you don't get out of there easily. So anyway, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back all the time, and she's just getting frustrated, and she's trying to remember at one point this passage in the book that she's read. And the Goblin King is there, and he's trying to distract her, and she's having a hard time remembering the line, and he's doing everything to get her to stop thinking about that, and she finally remembers the line, and the line is, "You have no power over me." Second she says that, the labyrinth disappears, the castle's there, there's the baby, problem solved. So I think for us, that's the solution. You're not going to decolonize me, none of you are. Stephen Harper's not going to decolonize me. Justin Trudeau's not going to decolonize me. I'm going to do that. I think I'm halfway there already. Being able to stand here a while ago and share that our most fundamental teaching with you, that Thanksgiving, those aren't just words that we say to make ourselves feel good. It's a worldview. It's a filter. That's the filter through which I look at the world. So when people come to me with solutions, you should do this, I measure it against that. And if it fits, I'll consider it. If it doesn't, no. I say no a lot. Because people come up with ideas and say, you should do this, you should do that. What we should do, I think there are no shoulds in life, but there are a few, maybe. We should go back and reclaim our culture. Because that's where the healing is for us, that's where the answers are, not only for us, but for all of them. We have healing in our culture. We know how to live with creation. People say we live in harmony with it. That's true to a certain extent. I think we've learned how to survive and thrive with it. And we've developed some pretty amazing ways of being that are largely lost today. That's the thing that concerns me the most about this. I hear more and more in the work that I'm doing now that Canada wants to incorporate traditional Indigenous knowledge in what it's doing. That is so dangerous. That is so dangerous what they're doing. They have no clue what that is. First of all, what is traditional Indigenous knowledge? I have to be blunt and I have to say that we live in an era of cultural confusion as Indigenous peoples because of residential school. I don't know if any of you have ever heard Juan Guisho, Oren Lyons, speak. He came to speak to the commissioners at the Royal Commission when I was working there. One of the commissioners pulled me aside and said, that guy talks like he's 1,500 years old. I said, he is. There's a string tied to the back of his head that connects him to the original teachings, going back to before there was a confederacy. That's still intact in him. It's not intact in me. It's not intact in 99.9% of the people in my community. The words I shared with you before, the concept that comes with that worldview is despised in my community by my own people, by my own brothers, my own sister, my own cousins, my aunts and my uncles. That is the impact of residential school that we are dealing with today. That is the challenge of decolonization. We can't even look at each other with respect in my community today. There's so much lateral violence, so much sexual abuse happening, so much incest, it's ridiculous. And I know I'm sounding negative, but this is the truth in my community. I'm not just condemning my community. I've tried to help my community. I'm still willing to do that. But we haven't hit rock bottom yet. So what does decolonization mean? I think it means what we just did over here. If there's not room for me here in my own territory, why is there room for everybody else? If there's not enough for me, why is there enough for you? We keep, this is always, and I'm glad that I'm not being told to get over it and move on here tonight, because that makes me not going to do that. I would like to move on and get over it, but I have to do my work in order to do that. I've been on my healing journey since 2005. It's not an easy journey. It's never going to end. But it's liberating. Where I am today compared to where I was 13 years ago, in night and day. You wouldn't have recognized me then. I wouldn't be standing here talking the way I am right now. So we have a lot of work to do. What you can do is help us by helping us with your politicians. They're the ones that get in the way. All we need is space. We need supportive space. I met my partner working on residential school issues, and I learned a lot from her on how to deal with those kind of issues. My father was a residential school survivor. The last thing you do to a survivor is go up to him and say, I know what's wrong with you. Come here, I'm going to fix you. Can't do that. You do that, chances are to go home and try something. It's like peeling an onion. So the way I dealt with it with my father, when I would go home, is I would sit and chat with my mother about my work. And I would tell her about the thousands of survivors that I met in BC. I talked about the patterns of behavior that they carry as a result of their experience in residential school. Most of them without even realizing that this is the way they behave. I recognize I recognize those patterns in them. That helped me see those patterns in my parents and see how they pass that on to me and how I pass that on to my kids. But I know it. I have that information now, so I can break that cycle. And I started doing that with my daughter. My son's, it's a different relationship. I haven't talked to him in a while. My daughter's the oldest one. We started working on a lot of that stuff. I lost both my parents in 2015. My mother first, and my father went 6 months later. And I got to spend the last 6 months of his life with him. And I'm happy to say that in that time, I think he resolved 99.9% of this stuff. So he was able to go home without that. So I don't know what the answer is. For me, I need space. I need my space. And if I can't have that, then we might as well just go home. So what's going to happen the next time the crap hits the fan? Because that's coming. That's coming. Iowa No More was 5 years ago. The next one's coming. I don't want to see the next one. That's why I accepted to come here. A lot of mistakes were made in the late 80s and in 1990, the stuff that led to that summer. Those same mistakes have been repeated. The last time they were repeated was not too far from here, for a church. Gustafson Lake, Ipperwash, 1995. Old Man Dam in Alberta. I'm worried that more of that's coming. I follow people on Facebook. The people that made July 11th happen in 1990, They disappeared for a while, but they're coming up again. They're starting to show their faces. They're starting to travel to communities. They're starting to get people pumped up again. These are not good people. They call themselves warriors. They fly that flag. They're not warriors. They're thugs. They took over our issue in 1990. 1990 was about land. It became about cigarettes, pot, alcohol, whatever you can smuggle. So in a way, they've adopted your economy. They've adopted your value system, and they don't even see that. And they're coming back. And they have a proven track record of every 28 to 30 years. They stir something up, the crisis hits, community gets surrounded, they fly up, go to Cuba, to where you've got these people are all millionaires. They've been selling cigarettes for 30 years now. They're multimillionaires. So when the shit hits the fan, excuse my language, they abandon elders, women, and children, and they disappear from the earth. And eventually they start to worm their way back in. And they're coming back now. I've seen them. They were in my community. They were in Ganhawaga. They were in Six Nations last week. They're good talkers. When they talk, you can't tell the difference between what they say and what I say. What I believe in is truth, respect, and friendship. Peace and balance. Those of you who know me know that. They use those same words. They don't believe in that at all. So I'm worried that that's coming, and people gravitate towards that. In 1990, when that happened, everybody rallied around those warriors and that flag, that orange flag. You've all seen it. They fly with the purple flag. You don't fly those two things together. The purple flag, that's based on the same principles as the two-row, that belt that I was holding a while. Truth, respect, friendship, peace. That orange flag is rooted in hatred and racism. I know the man who designed that flag. He's dead now. But he used to come to our longhouse when I was a kid. He was severely abused by priests when he was young. So he grew up an angry man, a hateful man. And I think he earned that hate legitimately, but that didn't give him the right to create this whole ideology of hate and racism that he's developed. He actually wrote a handbook for the warriors. These are supposed to be traditional people. They teach you how to field dress at M16 and AK-47 in this manual. So there's a real radical, hardline, hardcore group out there that doesn't mind stirring things up. And they're going to do it again. And if we're not ready for that, and if it happens again, I made a mistake in 1990. I didn't speak up when that happened because I didn't want the police to come in and kill people again. But if it happens again, I'm not going to do that this time. I've been vocal since then because I don't want that to happen again. People in my community are really messed up today. It is not nice what's happening there, and it's as a result of that. And this whole warrior mystique has developed into something that's really dangerous. I went to a meeting of the Ron Trombley, somebody, I don't know if you know him, but he's a traditional Grand Chief of the Wabanaki Confederacy. He called a meeting of the men this summer and said, our women have been standing on the front line of all this stuff for way too long. And as men, we've let our women down, and it's time for the men to reclaim their role as what warriors really are, which is protectors and defenders and providers. So he convened a meeting, and I wanted to go there because I knew people would have that symbol there, because everybody rallies around that warrior symbol. And I wanted them to understand, because one of the things that Ron and these men want to address is the drug problem in their communities. Dealers from outside come and they shack up with a woman from the community, and they just people are fed up with that. So they want to kick all the dealers out. So I went to that meeting to let them know that you need to be careful who you associate with in this warrior movement. Because you guys fly this flag, it means that something for you here, but the people back home who fly that flag are the ones you're trying to kick out of your community. They're the ones that are into pot and all the drugs. OxyContin and all these things. We have factories in our communities. Why am I saying all of this? Because ignorance can kill us. And it's easy for people who don't know when something happens to rally and want to come and support. That's what happened in 1990. We had support from all over the world. But nobody to this day knows what all of that was all about. They think it was You look on the surface, they think they got it understood. No. So you need to be able to differentiate the legitimate cause from the other ones. Otherwise, we're just going to have more problems. I'm just going to keep rambling, so I think I'll end it at that. I'm not sure what else to contribute. I hope you have questions. I think that would be helpful.